What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo coming back at you guys with yet another live duel commentary. Now for today's match we have Salamangreat on the left, again one of the underdog decks, but is still very capable of competing in this August 2019 format, going up against Pendulum Magician, a deck that all of us know should be doing pretty well. And before I go ahead and get into the commentary, while the Salamangreat player goes first and plays out his turn, if you're going to be in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area on August 17th and 18th, definitely come to the Pro Play Games Tour event. It is a $20 entry fee, $2,000 prize pool tournament. You guys want the cash prizes? We got them for you, and I'll be there doing live stream commentary coverage for the event. So check out the links below. Hope to see you guys there. So as we see, the Salamangreat player is starting off with a Salamangreat Foul, went into Balinks, then is searching off Salamangreat Sanctuary, and now we have Will of the Salamangreat following up, so he can go ahead and upgrade into that Sunlight Wolf, which then means he has the Sanctuary as a follow-up for a potential later turn. He doesn't really have anything good to get back off of that, but he does have 2 cards set and passing. Now, again, Salamangreat does have the ability to have much stronger starts than this, and the thing is the deck didn't really lose anything with Gazelle and Circle going to 1 in terms of consistency, or excuse me, in terms of its power. It lost the consistency, but the power is still definitely there. This is just one of those weaker instances that because it lost those 2 Gazelles, those 2 Circles, you're going to have some openings like this. So if you're playing Salamangreat, that is something you definitely need to look out for. Now, the Pendulum Magician player started things off with a Endymion, and then, a Servant of Endymion, then used a Dragon Shrine to send the Dark Worm to the graveyard. Dark Worm special summoned itself from the graveyard, adding a copy of Gate 0 to the hand. So now we're trying to see the Pendulum Magician player here just take up that Servant of Endymion as quickly as possible. Duelist Alliance coming down, allowing him to add any card with the word Pendulum from his deck to his hand. Usually you're going to go for something like Pendulum Call, but some other targets, like for instance Luster Pendulum, could come up in some very niche instances. And now that Servant of Endymion is on 2 counters, 1 more, and he will be able to special summon Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic, directly from the deck. It's not the worst thing for Salamangreat to deal with, especially compared to a deck like Sky Striker. However, it can still be very annoying just for a deck to deal with a non-targeting, non-destructive force that has a built-in negation and has a very large body in addition to that. But the Salamangreat player should be perfectly fine at this point. We see a scale of Harmonizing Magician that's going to tick the Servant up, and now he gets to use its effect, special summon both itself and a monster that can take a spell counter directly out of the deck, and then both of those monsters do get a spell counter. Now, the thing is, he does have Harmonizing Magician in the scale. It's not the worst thing. It is a high scale, so he does still have the potential to Pendulum Summon. And what's nice here is that the Pendulum Magician player has not actually, in fact, used a normal summon yet, so he could still potentially make Electromite without doing the normal summon and could potentially fuel himself up here for a very large Pendulum Summon, because once he makes Electromite, Electromite's going to give him 2 downward pointing arrows, which means he can special summon 2 monsters out of the extra deck, and then anything else potentially out of his hand. Do keep in mind as well, he does still have Pendulum Call, so Pendulum Call can get him essentially whatever scale he still needs. It does come at the cost of a discard, but it does break even in terms of card advantage because you're discarding 1 and using away the Pendulum Call to get yourself 2 extra cards. So it looks like the Pendulum Magician player is just deciding on what he wants to summon here. You could summon something like Jackal King as well. One of the benefits of summoning Jackal King, which it looks like that's what he's deciding on here, is that Jackal King can get the spell counters and then protect your plays from any potential hand traps just because it has that monster negating ability. So again, just depending on your play line or what you feel might be adequate for any particular situation, having the ability to negate those hand traps or any monster effect in general is very powerful. Just being able to protect your place could be very solid. And it looks like here he's going to go ahead and go into battle phase, interestingly enough. He's going to attack over the Sunlight Wolf with Jackal King. He does have the Balinks in graveyard to protect it, but he will be taking the 600 damage from this attack regardless. Jackal King being on a pretty respectable 2400 attack. Now, it looks like the Salamangreat player is deciding if he wants to protect or not. The interesting thing is if he does protect, the Dark Worm could just crash into the Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf and then pretty much take it out. The reason the Pendulum Magician player is most likely doing this is, oh, we see an Artifact Sanctum come down. Okay, so Sanctum's going to be huge here because this will mean that we're going to see a copy of Scythe, and Scythe will prevent him from special summoning from the extra deck for the duration of the turn. And going back to what I was saying earlier, the reason reason why this is significant is because the Pendulum Magician player is trying to force out the Salamangreat player's ability to use something like Salamangreat Rage or Roar because he does have that Sunlight Wolf. Now, obviously, those options are very limited, and the fact he had to have hard drawn them since he didn't search them by any means, but I think the Pendulum player is just trying to play it safe and ensure that his cards will resolve, and even if he doesn't win in this turn through the battle phase, the nice thing is he will then be able to, again, not, counting the fact that Sanctum came out, if he did take out the Sunlight Wolf, he would have pretty much been able to go on with his plays completely unhindered, so that would have been a pretty good option there. So we saw a copy of Infinite Impermanence come down. I think that was going to be used to stop the Jackal King from negating the effect of Scythe, since the Pendulum Magician player had 2 spell counters on the field thanks to the Servant of Endymion. And then we also had Sunlight Wolf triggering, adding back the copy of Foul to his hand, since Scythe was summoned to the zone that Sunlight Wolf points to. Jackal now gets to declare a replay attack since the number of monsters on the field changed, and it looks like he's going to go for the Sunlight Wolf here. Again, he's contemplating if he wants to let that Sunlight Wolf live. It would die one way or another because, again, he could just crash with his Dark Worm if he so wished, and we'll have to see. It looks like he decided to let it go, though. I think in that instance, it's going to go anyway, but I mean, maybe you force and just let him use the Dark Worm because that's one less monster for him to make Electromite with. That could be one way of looking at it. However, I mean, he's already under Scythe, so it doesn't really matter. He's not going to be doing those extra plays regardless, so maybe just keeping the Balinks for a future turn to ensure that your plays could potentially go through could be a lot more important. Salamangreat player just revealing which cards are known to his opponent. It is the Sanctuary as well as the Foul. And now it looks like we're in main phase 2 here, since that Scythe does have an attack power larger than both the Endymion as well as the Dark Worm. Playing the Artifact Engine in Salamangreat is still something that's very viable. Because Salamangreat is hindered due to the consistency hits on the ban list, you could just play cards that are going to more likely than not just slow your opponent down enough that you're going to be able to just help take control of the game from that point. Salamangreat's very explosive in the fact that, you've got stuff like Violet Chimera, you've got stuff like Reincarnation Summon, Heat Leo into Heat Leo. Just, there's a lot of cool things that the deck can do, and, just playing those cards to slow the opponent down could be exactly what you need. So now play is passed back to the Salamangreat player. You're seeing the strength of Artifact Sanctum here, being able to just completely shut down the Pendulum Magician's player, or excuse me, the Pendulum Magician player's turn. However, we do know that the Pendulum Magician player does have a copy of Pendulum Call in his hand, so you know that's going to be coming down on the next turn at the very least. So you do have to not only clear this board, which he does have this copy of Jackal King, so if the Salamangreat player does play any spells, he's going to have to worry about Jackal King ticking up and possibly being able to negate an effect. However, that does not count for Will of the Salamangreat because it's already on the field and it was not being activated out of the hand, which is activating the effect on field. So Sunlight Wolf gets revived, and now we see Foul be coming down as a normal summon here. Looks like the Salamangreat player's hand is actually clogged with a few hand traps. I think he has an Effect Veiler, and that might be a Phantasme in addition to that Sanctuary. So not only does he have to clear this board, but like I was saying earlier, he has to worry about the Pendulum Call as well. Again, it's not like the end of the world, but it's going to be pretty tough with this series of cards to be able to clear out this board, because currently he doesn't have a way to deal with the Jackal King. He could potentially use like a Reincarnation Link summoned Sunlight Wolf, or excuse me, not Sunlight Wolf, a Heat Leo, but that will put counters on the Jackal King. So that's one of the tricky parts about this, is that he can't use that Sanctuary without giving a counter to the, or excuse me, without giving the counters to the Jackal King, and now he has an effect negation online because he decided to activate that Sanctuary. So it's going to be a little bit tricky here, but we'll have to see what he's able to come up with. It's not looking too optimistic though. I think the Pendulum Magician player is still in a pretty favorable position. So we see a Reincarnation Link summon Sunlight Wolf here. The nice thing is that even if Jackal King were to use its effect to negate an effect, Balinks could protect it, so there is the possibility of, at least he could potentially Link summon it away, but again, it's still going to be a little bit rough here. So we see him go ahead and summon out Balinks with that Foul to the zone that Sunlight Wolf points to. That does allow him now to recur the Foul that was in the graveyard because of Sunlight Wolf's effect. So Now he has the potential to go into a Link 4 here. I don't know if he would have to. Again, he could go for a Heat Leo play, but again, just going to be tough. Jackal King just, I mean, the effect negation plus the fact that its body is pretty decently statted is not going to make this easy for the Salamangreat player. Looks like he's eyeballing the Heat Leo, and that's what he's going to go for. So Heat Leo is going to use its effect, contemplating using Jackal King's effect to shuffle away the Harmonizing Magician, which isn't bad, but again, we already know the Pendulum Magician player has Pendulum Call in his hand, so it's kind of like a lost cause at that point. The Harmonizing Magician being there is kind of not really, you know, losing that isn't too big of a deal at this point. So now it looks like he might be going to battle phase with his hands on the Scythe, potentially just ready to run over the Dark Worm and the Servant. All right, so he's going to take 500 from that exchange, and then I believe he's going to take a pretty significant amount with the Heat Leo going over the Servant. I believe Servant has like 900 attack. It has a very odd attack value. So I think that's like 1,200 damage there. So he lost about a quarter of his life from that. But he's going to pass, and that's the unfortunate thing. That Jackal King keeping things locked down, and this isn't going to bode too well here. So we see a Pen Call come down, and this is exactly what I was saying. Pendulum Call is going to be able to easily allow the Pendulum Magician player to get the scales that he needs, and at this point he can actually add the Harmonizing back to his hand, so then he can Pendulum Summon it out of his hand, because he already has Servant in as one of his scales, which means that Harmonizing will just generate another +1. Getting the Dragon Pit Magician as the high scale. Dragon Pit, something you're seeing some of the Pendulum Magician players play. Not necessarily in the main deck, but for sure in the side deck for those more back row heavy matchups, just to be able to pin down some of those pesky back row that you may not want to deal with. Jackal King just getting a ton of counters here now. Now, do keep in mind, the Pendulum Magician player does have 2 hand traps, or I guess a hand trap and a half, because Phantasme is like kind of a hand trap, just kind of allowing you to dig for more. We're seeing a big Pendulum Summon come down here, though. We see Dark Worm out of the extra deck, the Gate 0 out of his hand, the Harmonizing Magician potentially that he added. Oh, a second Dark Worm. And should be Harmonizing Magician for the last. Yeah, so a Pendulum Summon 4/4. He's going to go ahead now and use Harmonizing Magician's effect to grab the Dragon Caller Magician, it looks like. Again, Dragon Caller Magician, a new inclusion to this strategy to just turn any of your monsters into dragons, and then you can go ahead and resume with your your Guard Dragon combo. Now we see Electromite be made. We're going to see the Phantasme being used in response here. He could just use the Jackal King to negate this Phantasme if he really wants to, and I think that's what he did. I think he ticked it down. And negating the Phantasme here is nice. Yeah, the Salamangreat player still has Valor. Oh, but he's going to Valor it. Okay. So that's interesting. So he's going to opt to Valor the Jackal King to get this to resolve and hopefully draw into more hand traps off of this exchange. He draws into a Roar and a Foxy. I don't think that's going to do it. And that's not going to be enough here, I don't think. With a massive Pendulum Summon like that, no other ways. Yeah, I mean, Scythe and the Phantasme are big, but he's got more than enough monsters on the board right now to assemble some sort of Boral Sword combo to be able to just kill his opponent outright. I feel like he has all the pieces here that he needs. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like this should be a pretty convincing game 1 from the Pendulum Magician player. He might just have to find the line to get there, but I definitely think he has it. I think at this point, all he has to do is he has the Dark Worm, so he could potentially start doing Guard Dragon combos if he wanted to, if he made something like Triple Burst and then made the Elpie, and then to be able to just start getting cards out of his deck. He could get the, he can just start going off, and then he could get like stuff like anything for the extra deck with Agripane, and then he could eventually at some point just go into a Boral Sword Dragon and be perfectly fine. Again, we'll have to see. I'm not 100% sure. He also has a Strudo in the graveyard now too, so that's just another extender to be able to make this play even more explosive. He also has Servant of Endymion too, so he has, again, he has all the tools. I think this is going to be pretty convincing here. So Electromite's going to use its effect. He's going to go ahead and get Chronograph back. Chronograph is also going to use its effect to special summon itself. He draws off the Electromite. Not going to summon with Chronograph Sorcerer. You do not have to. He's going to hard overlay the Gate 0 as well as the Dragon Caller Magician. And I think, did he make an Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon? I think he did. That's going really old school for the Pendulum. That's making a throwback out of the Pendulum Magician FTK strategy. So Absolute Dragon's effect is going to special summon Vortex Dragon, bouncing away the Heat Leo when it's summoned to the field, also providing an Omni Negate. So if there are any other hand traps, I believe the Vortex Dragon might be able to stop them. I'm not 100% sure if it's strictly locked to the field. But again, this is kind of what I was saying. I feel like he has all the tools that he needs here. There's the LP, yes, and now he can go ahead and make Triple Burst, start doing Guard Dragon shenanigans protected by the Vortex Dragon. LP can go ahead and grab any of the dragons in his deck that he so wishes. He's going to grab the Aether. Aether can banish a card when it's special summoned, so he's going to go ahead and banish the copy of Scythe to stop any sort of recursion. It does target, though, so I believe he could potentially stop it with Phantasme, but that would just get negated by the Vortex Dragon. Linking off for Agripane now. Agripane can go ahead and special summon Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss or Crystal Wing or anything that he wants at this point, and he should be able to just easily summon a Borosword Dragon here and just attack over the Phantasme and just link everything off and just kill him. This is just how powerful this Pendulum Magician deck is. It didn't lose anything from the last Forbidden and Limited list, and this is why it's slated to be in such a good position moving into this format. There's the Borosword Dragon. Salamangreat player immediately scoops it up upon seeing that, and we are going into game number 2. So Salamangreat players, of course, going to start. Side decks are in effect now, so this could play a very significant role in how things progress. Obviously, we're probably going to see stuff like Twin Twisters from the Salamangreat player. Maybe Super Polymerization. I'm not sure if he main decks it or not, but that's another route. But starting off with Salamangreat Circle is a pretty good way to go about doing things to get that one copy of Gazelle out of the deck, especially when you start things off with a Jack Jaguar. I think this is going to be a much more explosive opening from the Salamangreat player by comparison to his game 1. And this is what I was saying. If you can find ways to get to your opening combo, you didn't lose the strength of the combo, you just lost the consistency. So the fact that you can go ahead and essentially end on the same boards that you were able to before means you're going to be able to just have yourself a pretty good time. So now we're going to go ahead and see just the traditional bread and butter combo for Salamangreat. We had Mirage Stalio coming out, special summoning Falco because he already has the Jack Jaguar, so he's no need to search that. We see Sunlight Wolf being made with the Mirage Stalio as well as the Baylings. He's going to go ahead and resurrect the Jack Jaguar to the zone that Sunlight Wolf points to, add Gazelle back to his hand, and we're actually going to see an overlay here. Are we going to see an Abyss Dweller? It looks like it. So this is a bit interesting. I wouldn't expect to see Dweller being used against Pendulum Magician. And I guess the theory behind that is maybe you can stop like the Dark Worm summon. I guess you can also stop Destrudo. There are a few cards that are pretty strong against Pendulum Magician that they do rely on the graveyard for, but not as many as like you would see in like maybe Orcus decks or for other strategies as well. So it's interesting that the Salamangreat player opted to go for this line of play. We're gonna have to see if it pays off for him. Pendulum Magician player starting things off with a Servant of Endymion. Very good start, and there's a Duelist Alliance, so that's going to be at least one spell counter, possibly two because he can search Pendulum Call. Again, he can search like Luster Pendulum. There's plenty of good targets for a Duelist Alliance to go ahead and add. I think I called it Pendulum Call, excuse me, but Duelist Alliance to search Pendulum Call, which is what he did. One counter goes on the Servant. Pendulum Call can get him any two Pendulum Magicians, and then he can play one of those for scale to get the third one. I mean, it's pretty solid, but again, we're going to have to see... we're going to see if this Dweller pays off here. I'm really curious as to know if that's going to have any relevance whatsoever. Pendulum Call, pitching Pendulum Call for cost. You know, it's never really a good thing when you have multiple copies of a card that is a hard once per turn, but it's nice when they have discard costs so you can go ahead and just get them out of your hand. So we see a Harmonizing that's going to go to hand, as well as one other Magician. We'll have to see what he opts for here. Do keep in mind that the Salamangreat player does have two cards set in his back row too, and those are complete unknowns. Those weren't searched in any way, so that's going to be cool to see what he's got. There's plenty of stuff to play around. I mean, Super Poly could be for consideration. He could have hard drawn Roar for all we know, maybe Impermanence. We saw that he played that in game one. These are all the things you need to be going through in your mind. So going for Dragon Pit Magician here, and this is going to be a way, like I said, you get to see the power of Dragon Pit Magician. It does require require a discard, but we do see a Salamangreat circle being used before the Dragon Pit even attempts to use its effect, because now we're going to go ahead and ensure that we get that search. He could have used it in response, but maybe he wanted to, I'm not sure. Maybe he just wanted to just get that out first and then just have only one back row, because we did not see the Pendulum Magician player pitch. Maybe he wanted to get that search before the Servant was able to use its effect. There could be a myriad of different reasons, but we are seeing this now, and the Salamangreat player is just deciding on which card he wants to add with that circle. Looks like he might be going for Foxy, deliberating between Foxy and Foul. It looks like he ended up deciding on the Foxy there. Here it is, Gazelle in hand, we know that. And there's Twin Twister. Okay, so that's a pretty big play, because now Twin Twister is going to take out both the Servant as well as the Dragon Pit. And then because a Salamangreat card hit the grave because he pitched the Foxy, he is able to special summon Gazelle. Gazelle can send a card, and then Sunlight Wolf gets to add Foxy back to his hand. So a really nice sequence of plays there. Now, because he did pen call, the Dragon Pit Magician actually will stay because it is prevented from being destroyed for the turn. So that's the only part that's a little bit unfortunate. He doesn't clear the scales out entirely, but maybe preventing the Servant from resolving is enough in this instance. It could be. We'll just have to see. But he did send a copy of Rage to the graveyard with Gazelle. And Rage is a very good card in the Pendulum Mirror, or excuse me, the Pendulum matchup, just because you have the ability to pop scales with it, and that could just be the ultimate blowout to prevent them from having any sort of comeback. But the Pendulum Magician player did complete his scales. We're going to see a Pendulum summon of Servant of Endymion, a Gate 0, and then I think the Harmonizing Magician that he searched, and possibly a fourth card here as well. And there it is, the Purple Poison Magician. Now, Harmonizing gets to trigger. This, again, just shows how powerful this deck really is, being able to just spam all these monsters onto the board. Then Harmonizing Magician gets to generate even more. Man, such a strong deck. Pendulum Magician's been around for so long now, even if it necessarily hasn't always been at that tier 1 level. You've always seen it in like the rogue category, probably one of the most solid tier 2 picks you could ever have in any particular format, you know, pretty much after the Pendulum FTK days. But it's been able to just keep up just because the deck is resilient. It's got so much going for it. They got the Pendulum summoning mechanic for its ability to just spam the board, also gives you a nice recovery option. We see Harmonizing Magician gonna summon the Dragon Caller Magician directly out of the deck, and we're seeing that Abyss Dweller isn't really paying off here as much as the Salamangreat player may have liked. Maybe he was banking more on Dark Worm being able to, or Destrudo for that matter, just playing a much more important role in this game too here. But we'll have to see. So it looks like now we're seeing the Dweller using its effect, and then that's going to go ahead and trigger the Falco. Falco can add the, or excuse me, it will set the Rage to the back row. That doesn't matter too much. We do see a Veiler coming down on Electromite that was Link summoned though, and that could be pretty huge. He did already Pendulum summon, and Veiler stopping everything from Electromite, since it will stop all 3 effects, could be enough to potentially, you know, thwart any huge plays here, because now he's not going to be able to get any extra card advantage. He's not going to be able to set himself up. He's not out of it by any means, but that effect Veiler is very strong at the very least. He does have a lot to work with here, though, because he's got the Harmonizing Magician, Purple Poison, he's got Dragon Caller, he's still got 4 monsters to be able to make Link plays with. None of them are currently dragons, so it wouldn't be seeing any sort of Guard Dragon shenanigans, at least at the current moment. And Destrudo can't be used if he did have any way to access it, because Dweller does have the graveyard currently on lockdown. And like I said, the Salamangreat player does have that Rage set in the back row, so the Pendulum Magician player does have to be cognizant. We see him making an Abyss Dweller of his own, which is actually pretty strong. We know that this can be a very crippling card against the Salamangreat matchup, just solely due to the fact that Dweller can lock down the graveyard, prevent the Spinny from being recurred. There's a Foxy in there, a Falco, and we see him going to the battle phase. Dweller's going to go ahead and declare an attack over the Gazelle, and now he's going to go ahead and let that go. Gazelle will hit the graveyard. And the Salamangreat player is going to have his work cut out for him next turn. Again, he's not in a horrible position because Rage is going to be able to put in a lot of work here. However, it's going to be tough just because Dweller will have the graveyard on lock, and it's not going to be easy to be able to set up while that Abyss Dweller is in effect. So now we see Triple Burst. Looks like he's going to declare an attack on possibly the Sunlight Wolf. I think the only issue with that is that, you know, Dweller's not really going to be able to do anything. So he's going to go ahead and just attack over the Salamangreat player's Abyss Dweller and pass the turn. Took about 700, 800 damage from that. 700, excuse me, from the Triple Burst taking out the Dweller. So really, life total isn't too relevant at the moment, but it could get to that point later. I think that is a Super Poly in the Salamangreat player's hand, and that could be very huge because there is a, I mean, the field is set up for a possible, I mean, I don't know if he can necessarily get any of the reduction effects to be able to really capitalize on a Violet Chimera at this point. But that Rage is pretty strong. I mean, Rage could take out 2 cards potentially just by itself. We have a Foxy now. Foxy is going to trigger Sunlight Wolf since it was summoned to a zone that Sunlight Wolf points to. Looks like he's going to take back his Gazelle. Now, the nice thing is Gazelle can use its effects. He's going to go ahead and use the effect of Foxy as well. He's going to whiff. He's not going to hit any Salamangreat cards. So if he does anything like link off the Foxy here, he can bring out Gazelle. Gazelle can dump another card into the graveyard. He's going to go ahead and Rage on the Reincarnation Link Summon Sunlight Wolf to pop both the Dweller and the Triple Burst Dragon. That will definitely prompt the Dweller to be chained in response. And, oh! Is he not? Or is it might have just been implied that he's going to go ahead and use that effect, even though he didn't necessarily detach for it. He's going to attack with the Foxy as well as the Sunlight Wolf for a minimal amount of damage. I believe that's 2,800 total. And now he might just set that Super Poly. Is he going to pass? No, I don't think he's going to do that. He might go ahead and summon a Heat Leo. Yeah, I was going to say, because he could go Heat Leo and shuffle both of the scales away, and that might just be a, that might be enough, because I don't think the Pendulum Magician player has any cards left. So he's in a full-on top deck mode. And just like that, the Salamangreat player was able to turn things around. So that's pretty significant. Looks like the Pendulum player is going to go ahead and scoop things up. And we are going to game number 3, ladies and gentlemen. So this is going to be it. Now, the thing is, Pendulum Magician is going first. This is the first time it's gone first in this entire set. And as we know, this deck definitely thrives on going first. However, Salamangreat does play a lot of different hand traps. You've got stuff like Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler, Phantasme, Ghost Ogre. There's so many different options. Looking at this Salamangreat player's hand, though, I actually don't think he opened any single hand traps whatsoever. Just on a quick glance of him shuffling his hand, I couldn't tell for sure, but it actually looks like he might have just opened a bunch of Salamangreat monsters. I think there's a Super Poly, so there is still a little bit of hope, but we're going to have to see. So we see a Dark Worm be normal summoned, and we see a Time Gazer Magician in the scale. Dark Worm's going to go ahead and add a copy of Gate 0. Now we're going to go ahead and see the Gate 0, or excuse me, we're going to see a, I believe that's a Dragon Caller being played in the scale. And now we're going to see a Pendulum summon for 1, 2, 3 monsters, dumping out his entire hand. It's going to link 2 of them off into Electromite immediately. Electromite going to use its effect. He's going to dump one of his cards. Maybe something like a, I don't know, Chronograph Magician could be a good one. Or Chronograph Sorcerer, excuse me. Chronograph Sorcerer, if that would be a Magician, that card would be insane. But we're going to see the Chronograph Sorcerer special summon itself now. He's going to pop the Time Gazer Magician in his scale. He will get to draw a card off of that. And it was a Duelist Alliance. That's a pretty nice rip, because now he gets to get Pen Call. It's not like the most significant thing at the moment, but he will have the counters on the Jackal King, which is what makes that very significant here. And now he gets to go ahead, go into his Guard Dragon combo with Elpie, going up into the Triple Burst. Now he can take anything out of his graveyard, probably Destrudo. Yep, he's going to go ahead and link both of those off into the copy of Agripane. Tiger Pain's going to special summon Hot Red Dragon Archer, or excuse me, Vortex Dragon, and then Vortex Dragon is going to just be able to provide another layer of negation here, and then he's going to link both of those off into Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. So with a Pen Call in hand, he's going to draw to a card to be able to assemble Scales to Pendulum Summon next turn. He's got 2 negations on field at this moment, plus the Hieratic Seal. So we do know he has Super Poly in his hand, so Super Poly can take out... well, actually, Super Poly is a bit nullified here because he has a Dark, a Wind, and a Light. So he can't actually go into a Starving Venom because none of the monsters for Starving Venom, there's not 2 dark, so that's out of the question here. He could go for the Predaplant Dragostapelia if he does play it, but that's a very underused fusion monster for Super Poly, but it would be exactly what he needs because it requires a fusion monster and a dark monster, and that just so happens to be what the Pendulum Magician player has on the board. But again, I don't think a lot of people play that card, so I wouldn't count on it. We see a normal summon of Foxy to start things off here. Looked like he has a lot of normal summons in his hand. Looked like double copy of Foxy. Oh, we're going to see Super Poly come down, though. Okay. So this could be a opportunity to fuse immediately into the Salamangreat fusion. So now it looks like... I'm not sure. I think they were discussing... I think the Pendulum Magician player was... possibly trying to use the spheres, but you can't respond to Super Poly. That's what makes it so powerful. Violet Chimera coming down, just requiring a Link monster as well as a Salamangreat monster. So he's got Violet Chimera now, but he still has to play through these 2 negations. Now, the thing is, Chimera can kill over the Jackal King, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But Vortex Dragon, I believe, has like 3,000 defense, so that is still a pretty large body that he has to deal with here. I think he's actually going to use the Jackal King to negate the Violet Chimera, because I'm not sure if... Oh, actually, is he using Jackal King to negate the Foxy by chance? I'm not sure. It looks like they were possibly talking about something and he was contemplating it. I think I see a second copy of Super Poly in his hand. That is actually crazy. Okay, so Salamangreat, the... Violet Chimera is hitting the graveyard, so I think he was actually, the effect was being used, and I think he was negating and destroying it with the Jackal King. Must be a mandatory effect, so we're going to see him pitch a Salamangreat Spinny to resurrect a Foxy, because the Pendulum player does have the Dragon Caller in the scale. So Foxy resurrects, he's going to pop the Dragon Caller. Still gonna be rough though. He can resurrect Spinny, like that's not bad, but I mean, I don't think that's gonna be able to happen. He's gonna link off the Foxy, go for a Balinx here. He can still, again, he's gonna trigger the Balinx effect to possibly search Sanctuary. Man, that second copy of Super Poly, man, that would be so good, but I don't think he even has like another target for it. So he's going to let the Sanctuary, or excuse me, the Balinx resolve to search the Sanctuary. So he's got that, but again, man, if he could resolve that second Super Poly, that would be nuts. But again, I don't think that's going to happen. Sanctuary comes down, Jackal King upticks to 2 more counters. It already has used its effect this turn, though, so Vortex is the only negation still online at the moment. He's going to Reincarnation Link summon for another copy of Balinx. He's going to try to use the Spinny here. Pendulum player thinking if he wants to negate that, he's going to let that resolve. The thing is, Vortex could just negate, like, Mirage Stalio at that point. I believe he already normal summoned this turn because he started the turn by normaling the Foxy. So hopefully the players pick up on that. Oh, and it looks like the Pendulum Magician player is, yeah. And they're pointing and... Oh, that's unfortunate. It looks like the Salamangreat player realized he already normal summoned, and the Pendulum player is going to take it. Guys, this just shows how powerful the Pendulum Magician deck is. Thank you so much for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.